Frogs are strange. I don't think that's mentioned as often as it should be. It's thought that frogs first appeared around the end of the Permian and the beginning of the Triassic, and this followed the biggest extinction event ever, with over 95% of life forms becoming extinct. This allowed for new species to evolve and experiment with new ways of surviving in a changing world. The frog body plan has clearly been a successful experiment, surviving relatively unchanged to the 21st century. They're all carnivorous in the adult stage, with a large mouth, a round or a squat body that they sometimes use large hind limbs to propel forwards. And I feel at this point I should mention that there is no phylogenetic distinction between frogs and toads. Toads are essentially seen as different to other frog species as they have shorter limbs, drier skin, and tend to be less gracile. Such traits have evolved multiple times in the Anuran order, perhaps most notably in the family Bufonidae. The UK, being a fairly cold island for much of the year, is not particularly blessed with reptiles and amphibians. The most common amphibian by far is this, Rana temporaria, the common frog. They can vary in size and colour, with some individuals reaching 13 centimetres in length. Common colours for this species include green and brown, although it's known for some to be red or pink. One feature to always look out for to distinguish from other frog species is the dark stripes on their hind limbs. There is another frog species living in the UK. Is it invasive? Well, yes, but actually no. The pool frog is the largest species of amphibian in the UK. They're also largely descended from frogs introduced from France. I can see why frogs would want to escape. They've been introduced on several occasions over the past 200 years, but it turns out there's been a small population that have closer genetic resemblance to pool frogs in Scandinavian countries, and there have been no introductions from there, so they could only have crossed over during the Pleistocene, when the North Sea didn't exist and one could walk from Britain to Scandinavia. On the smaller end of the amphibian scale, there are 3 species of newt found here: the great crested newt, the smooth newt, and the palmate newt. Unlike other salamanders found elsewhere in the world, newts are semi-aquatic. In adult stages, these 3 species will spend their breeding seasons in small ponds, and much of the year will be spent in the undergrowth or crevices. The great crested newt is the largest of these 3 species, with females sometimes reaching 16 centimetres in length, but still not reaching the mass of some frog species. It's also the easiest to recognise, with dark flanks and an orange underside, as well as an enormous crest during the breeding season. Smooth and palmate newts are very similar. They're even in the same genus, Lysotriton. To confidently tell the difference between them, you would need to look at the underside, particularly around the throat. Smooth newts will most likely be spotted, whereas palmate newts will have a much plainer appearance. In order to identify, you would have to pick them up and look. Amphibians have semi-permeable skins and are therefore vulnerable to chemicals on our skin. Most notably, that would refer to salts that are secreted with our sweat and then left on our hands as the sweat evaporates, and these salts will irritate amphibian skin and dehydrate them. As well as the chemicals we naturally secrete, they're vulnerable to the chemicals that we put on our skin, like soaps, antibacterial lotions and sunscreen. Even traces of tap water are harmful to amphibians, given that it contains fluoride, chlorine and nitrate. Compared to other countries' standards, our tap water would be considered unsafe for human consumption, let alone interactions with fish and amphibians. As such, I would say that you should only pick up an amphibian if absolutely necessary. However, there are bigger threats to amphibian populations. Climate change is leading to warmer and drier summers, with 2016, 2020 and 2019 being the hottest years on record. This trend of increasing temperatures is set to continue. Here is the body of a common frog that I found in the summer of 2018. It is so desiccated that the organs have atrophied and the skin is tightly wrapped around the skeleton. climate is not the only threat to amphibian populations. Chytridiomycosis is a fungal disease spreading throughout the world. It is yet to be seen in the UK at dramatic scales as has been seen in other countries. However, where it does hit amphibians, it can result in 100% mortality rates. 90 species have already gone extinct in the wild as a result of chytridiomycosis. In the UK, we have ranavirus to worry about. First reported among common frogs in 1980s England, frogs afflicted will become lethargic and emaciated, as well as having red skin, developing ulcers, bleeding from the mouth or anus, and having necrotic limbs. Among isolated populations, responses can vary from total mortality to recurrent mortality every few years, or those that are not immune being totally wiped out, allowing for the resistant frogs to prosper. Even with immunity and conservation efforts, the future of many amphibian species looks bleak.